ado, I want to pass on the mic to our incredible speaker of the day, Daphne. Before anything else, thank you for making time for this and sharing your knowledge and insight with all of the startups we have on the call. So Daphne is, self-proclaimed customer obsessed. She's the head of customer success for UK and I, and is also, podcast extraordinaire. She runs a podcast on all things customer success, women in technology, career growth. Also has a blog on this topic and was most recently recognized as a top 25 CS influencer of 2022. So we are very excited to have her. And over to you, Daphne. We're excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Ragini, if you can give me control of the screen. Brilliant. Awesome. So I won't introduce myself. I feel Ragini did a really, really great job at that. Today's topic of conversation is how to improve net revenue retention by focusing on your customers' outcomes. So when we think about growth and in the context of customer success, we always think about customer success as the second engine of revenue growth for a business. So first, obviously, you have your net new sales, your sales team who are bringing customers into the org, but it is through customer success that you are able to retain and grow your customers. So when I look at growth, is a topic that one is very close to my heart, but at the center of the conversation about customer success. In trying to narrow down growth, to have a meaningful conversation today, I thought about loads of different things. You can talk about people growth, how to scale your teams. You can talk about company growth, how to scale customer success inside your business. But at the center of everything is really customer growth. Like when in HubSpot, we have a saying that it's an equation. We say customer value, it's bigger than team value or organizational value, that's bigger than individual value. And we use this equation to very much keep us honest in where do we need to create the maximum value in order for the entire chain to grow. So if we're able to drive customer value, we're then able to recapture that value and we're able to grow as a business. And then the people in our business will grow and they will have meaningful careers, opportunities. So this is all to say that growth is connected, right? Everything is connected, but at the center, you have your customer growth. And that is where customer success really needs to focus on. It's driving that success, driving outcomes for your customer. But when we look into how we measure growth today, we can look at some of the metrics that we have. Net revenue retention being the North Star. A lot of businesses are measuring that. We have average revenue per user, we have lifetime value, then we get some product metrics with like the number of integrations, usage, health, transactions, etc. But a very interesting thing about customer success metrics is what they all have in common is that they're all about you, right? So if we look back at those metrics, they tell you how efficient you are at your own growth, but they tell you nothing about how effective you are at helping your customers grow. If we take, for example, the growth journey, it's obviously a very simple version of the growth journey of a customer. The first step in that journey is that they're going to come to your organization and they're going to buy your product. For example, for HubSpot, we're a CRM tool. Customers usually come to us to increase their revenue. So they buy a CRM platform because they want to see more revenue coming into their business. Once they buy, step number 2 is to actually take the tool that they just bought and implement the features that will help them increase the efficiency of their sales process or their marketing process. Step number 3, if a customer is successful in the implementation phase, is that they're going to start reaping the benefits of the productivity of their sales process, their marketing process. Their reps are able to, for example, work through more leads because they have automation of communication. They're able to create more deals because they're able to talk to more leads. So the entire velocity of the sales process increases, the volume that the teams are able to manage increases. And then hopefully as step number 4, by working with more customers, by creating more deals, they're able to increase their revenue. And when our customers increase their revenue, their company grows, they have more people in their sales team coming in, they have more complexity in their organization, which means that step number 5 is the customer has a new need. They now need either more advanced features, they need more licenses. So when we look at this growth journey, we're really good at measuring step number 1, which is the net new revenue. Every organization would be very good at measuring that. If you're more mature, you're also measuring step number 2. You might be calling that activation, or you might have a different metric for product usage. More mature companies would be very good at measuring step number 5, which is the net revenue retention. It's whether you recapture that growth. But very few companies are measuring step 3 and 4 on whether customers, the usage of their platform is actually translating to value to customers. Now, you might say, Daphne, we're measuring health, right? Which is after the activation of the features is whether customers are using the platform. And I want to challenge your thinking today a little bit in relation to health. The reason why is I talk to customer success leaders every day. I manage a very, very big book of business in HubSpot. And I can tell you that most customers' health status is green when they cancel. This is what we call a watermelon customer. They look green from the outside, but they're red on the inside. And that is because the customer is logging in, they're clicking the right buttons, they made the right integrations, but they're still not seeing outcomes. They are not seeing the results from what they purchase. They're not achieving the goal that they had initially with your product. Now, the big question then is, how can we then measure customer success, true customer success, not our success in regaining that business, but actually the leading metric that will tell us whether customers, if they are achieving the outcomes. We have to measure the outcomes. We're lucky that we don't need to start anything from scratch here. A lot of product teams are already using frameworks for outcomes to design our products. So when we go about, creating a brand new product, and you'll be very familiar with this working early stage of the product in a startup, you're thinking, what is the job that the customer is trying to achieve with the product? What's the problem that I'm trying to solve? What is the pain point? So product teams will organize themselves around those jobs to be done and develop products that help customers achieve that. Now, take again the example of a CRM. If a customer comes to you with the goal, the outcome of increasing revenue, you break that into smaller pieces where you're like, okay, so if a customer needs more revenue, then they need more leads, then they need more deals, then they need better conversion in their deals. And you build features around ensuring that customers can do all of those steps within your product. So why not take that framework, think about the jobs our customers have to do, and then bring that into our metrics of success, right? So imagine a world where you can, in a CRM platform, for example, you are able to say to your customers and track at scale whether they're increasing the number of leads that they are generating over time, whether you're helping them increase the number of deals that they create, whether their conversion rate is improving or not. I mean, our job in customer success is to help customers realize their outcomes. If we're not tracking their outcomes, then how can we do our jobs? It's extremely important for us to be able to do this. And you might say to me again, Daphne, if I log into a customer portal, in the back end of that portal, I can see all of this data. I can run a report on this. But then the question is it centralized and is it actionable? Can you take, like you have a number for lifetime value, for CAC, for net revenue retention, do you have a number that you can look at in aggregate for all your customers and then say, we are making progress on this month over month, quarter over quarter? Can you take action on that? So there is a very smart man, Peter Drucker, he was a management consultant, that said, you can't improve what you can't measure. And I like going back to this because if we're not measuring our customer outcomes, how can we get better at driving them? It's extremely hard to do that. You will then fall into the trap of measuring vanity metrics. Like, for example, CSAT. I'm not saying that they are not useful metrics, that obviously we want to understand our experience, but they are not metrics that tell you whether your customers are being successful. And they are not metrics that will directly correlate with your ability to regain revenue at the end of this journey. So looking at outcomes, it will help you, one, drive them, but actually also communicate value that you deliver to your customers. And you see that, especially if you're in a business model where you have annual contracts. So if you're a SaaS company, or if you depend on customers reinvesting into your product, like, for example, if you have a transactional or advertising model, if you can't communicate the value that you deliver, not in your own metrics, not in vanity metrics, but in actual outcomes, is extremely hard for you to retain that business. I personally think that if you want to drive customer outcomes, you need to be centralizing the collection. So you have to take the data from all your jobs to be done for your customers, and you need to collect them centrally. And then you need to measure against that and measure your progress. If you're a small business, that might seem to you, okay, this is a lot of work, but it's a lot more work if you don't do it right from the start. Because if you're trying to do this once you have a very established product where you've never thought about collecting this data, you will have lost a lot of time. And also, you might have a much more complex data infrastructure that's harder to change. Your product will be harder to change. So doing this right from the start is extremely important. I think that you can be way more effective at talking to your customers. If you're able to say things like this: we helped our customers increase their leads by 35% this quarter. That is a statement that carries weight and that your customers will care about. In our world of CRM, leads are a very important thing. In your world, that might be different. It might be a different outcome that your customer is trying to achieve. But being able to measure and be specific about the impact that you have will gain trust. Rajani was saying at the start that customers are using over 200 SaaS tools. All those executives in those companies, the decision makers that you're trying to reach, they are getting messages from CSMs from all of those organizations, whether it's a scale CSM via automation or whether it's a real human being. They're getting all those messages. They're not engaging with all of them. There's just not enough time for them to do their job if they were to engage with all of them. They will only engage with the people who have strong communication and then can show their impact. And communicating this is really important. And it starts with understanding what the outcomes are and then measuring them. As an individual CSM, getting in front of those decision makers and those executives is hard, but it's easier if you can say to them, the customers that worked with me actively doubled their deal conversion this year. So I think it's worth us spending some time together if this is one of your objectives. This is a much more powerful message than just saying, hi, just checking in, want to know how you guys getting on. And now I want to get nerdy with you, because this is the baseline, right? The setting of the outcomes, the measuring of the jobs to be done. Like that is the baseline for actually scaling. And in a world where your company is measuring customer outcomes, something really special can happen. You can achieve what we call the network effect. If you're new to this concept, the network effect is when the value of your product increases based on the number of users leveraging it. So if you have 100 people in the network, they are all your customers, and they're all using your tool, and you're tracking their outcomes, you're also able to track the behaviors that led to those outcomes. So let's say you have a very successful customer at generating leads. You can look at all of the things that customer is doing in the system, and then trace it back to other customers that have the same objective. So if I am a very successful customer generating leads, and I am a heavy user of HubSpot landing pages, then I'm able to take that insight and share with the rest of the network. And I don't mean just on your community or using your CSM to actually have those conversations with customers. I actually mean using machine learning. So you connect customers that have similar segmentation, that have similar objectives, and you look at the most successful, the top performing customers on your network based on those jobs to be done. And then you connect what they're doing to other customers. So if you go into your system and your objective is to generate leads and you're new, you might get app notifications that say, like, here are the things that you should do. Have you looked at this feature before? To take this in a more practical lens, if I am a top performing customer in your network, and my objective was to grow revenue, and I've been successful, I've been able to grow my revenue by 35% in the last 12 months, then you can look at what drove that. Well, you can see that I'm a heavy user of 5 specific tools, that I've attended a very specific type of webinar, like, for example, a marketing inbound webinar, and that I'm using heavily some integrations like the CRM to email integration. So if a new customer comes into your network and their goal is exactly the same, guess what? The recommendations that they're going to get are to follow that path. And the beauty of using machine learning is that you do not rely on point-in-time analysis to actually make those recommendations. So it's no longer that you are going to, let's say, run a regression analysis in your system every 6 months, every 12 months, and then build playbooks that are geared towards those recommendations. But as the landscape changes and as people succeed or fail every day, your system is getting smarter. I know that seems daunting, but one of the biggest questions that CSMs get every single day when they talk to customers is, how are other customers like me doing this? People are curious. They want to know. They want to learn. They want to know from best in practice. And that's one of the reasons they talk to their CSMs, that they see value in the service. So if you're able to provide the answer to this question before the question is answered, you're building competitive advantage. There are companies that are already paving the way on this. A lot of them will be on the B2C market, but I think some interesting stats, for example, from Amazon, 50% of what Amazon users buy are coming from smart recommendations. So what Amazon does is they learn from your profile, the books that you buy, the products you buy, the shows you watch, what you listen, and then they take all that insight from what you like, what you gave 5 stars, what you listened to the end, what you watched to the end, and then they package that up as recommendations to other customers. And imagine if 50% of your net revenue retention was coming from customers that were getting recommendations from you. without you touching that customer whatsoever at a scale model. Imagine how incredible that would be. Netflix prevented $1 billion in churn last year because of their recommendation engine. As customers were ready to drop off of their platform, they were recommended new shows to watch, and they retained their subscription. So in the B2C market, companies are already paving the way. The B2B space is a little bit behind. But whenever we talk about machine learning, AI, etc., the question is what happens to the humans in this process? And the job of the CSM is not going anywhere. So if you're thinking about like, how do I build my customer success team, how I scale my customer success team, the job of the CSM isn't going anywhere because of this. However, the job of the CSM is going up in value, where instead of being the person answering the question, how are other customers doing this, now they're helping customers implement the suggestions. They're helping customers navigate change management. Changing process is a difficult thing. Changing systems is a difficult thing. They are working with nuanced use cases when customers have innovative ideas or when they want to do something that is very specific to their industry. So you might be asking yourself, Daphne, you've given me all these things. You've given me jobs to be done, outcomes, metrics. Where do I start? So first and foremost, if you do not have your jobs to be done well defined yet, start there. There's nothing you can do until that's done, until you understand what are the key outcomes that you're driving with your customer. Start collecting and measuring them, and you can do that today. If you don't have first-party data in your system, in how you're driving your customer outcomes, talk to your product. You need to build that kind of data into your product. If you're waiting for your customer to tell you if they have achieved or not achieved their goals, is a missed opportunity. So look at first-party data and how you can measure whether your customers have achieved their outcomes in your system. Then start taking meaningful action based on the insights. So take the insights that you have, if it's where you are with, for example, the lead generation, like how can we improve that by 10%? And then start taking action on that, driving value to customers. And then when you can show to people that when you look at outcomes and then you take meaningful action on that, that you're getting results, that you are getting more net revenue retention, that you're getting a higher lifetime value, then you can start lobbying your leadership, or if you are the leadership of this organization, then you can justify to your investors why you're investing in machine learning now. Machine learning is a very different data infrastructure. So again, the sooner you do this with your product, the better. When you're 5-10 years down the line and you're trying to migrate your entire data infrastructure into a new way of looking at data into data graphs, is a very, very daunting and big process and very expensive. So if you can do right from the start, that's a competitive advantage. And that's it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I will watch out for the Q&A.
Thank you, Daphne. And just for everyone, we had a bit of an issue with our chat. It's been fixed, so now everyone can ask questions. So if you have anything for Daphne, but also maybe HubSpot, learn a little bit about their onboarding program, how they sort of tackle the measure collecting aspect, please ask in the chat box. And now I'm going to give the word to you, Søren, if you would like to share your presentation, talk a little bit about growth in the economic turbulent times that we're in.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Camilla, for having me. You should be able to see something now.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Søren. I work at Openly as a director of sales and customer success. I have spent the majority of my adult life working in tech companies, in particular around customer success. Highlighted some of my jobs and positions within the last 15-16 years, from all of them B2B SaaS, from doing niche point of sale software, working with support, account management before we had a thing called customer success. Then I joined Trustpilot as well, where we scaled up our CS from a relatively small team to around almost 100, I think. And now I'm at a tech startup here in Copenhagen called Openly. So just briefly around Openly, some of you from the Copenhagen area may know us as Legal Monster. It was founded in 2018 as a career content management solution, classic B2B now, where we are going to market with a more typical SaaS solution, solving a different problem or different pain. We are a team from Trustpilot. Entire management team, founders are all early people from Trustpilot. We are around 18 employees now, and we are working in this legal tech environment where we are especially also the tech companies trying to get an understanding of GDPR and to be privacy and to be compliant. It's a wave that is only getting bigger since the launch of GDPR in 2018, and it can be extremely complex to understand. And right now, businesses everywhere are built on other systems, tools, software, and services. Daphne also briefly mentioned that about the uses of apps. And to try and navigate in all of that, we are building a solution to be the go-to privacy solution for businesses everywhere. For us, moving into topic of today, customer success is doing the right thing. It's making sure all departments are involved. We are still a relatively small team of 18. I'll come back to this, and it's founder-led. So my customer success has been very interesting. I think it can be a lot of things. If you want to find a definition for it, you can get 1,000 different answers. And if you ask 10 CS professionals, you can probably also get 10 different answers. But more or less to me, it is being proactive to make sure the customers who are using your product is reaching the objectives. I definitely mentioned this as well. Really focus on solving the reason for why they bought the product. That's number one. With that, you will naturally get a reduction of churn and more opportunities to upsell and expand for customers. When I left Trustpilot to go try something else, I actually wrote our CS journey and my way of thinking around CS. I was there for 4 years, and CS is under constant development. But from my perspective, what you need to build a successful customer success department is around people, process, and technology. People is the combination of people, the different profiles. You want to make sure you're doing CS by nature and doing the right thing also when no one is looking. You really want to have processes in play to link the different departments together, from new biz to onboarding to renewals and churn and cancellations. And then you want to have the technology foundation to support this, in particular the product department, where you need access to data, super critical to be able to understand if what you're actually spending your time and resources on are solving the outcomes for the customers. And to support that, especially nowadays, you really need the support from the entire organization and have a culture around this. So that is actually something my opinion about it was back in 2019, and still is. Moving into today's topic, I'll try and modify that into how the current market situation and these troubled waters we're in. Using some examples from what we did at Trustpilot, but also what we're doing is now. I think what's important to say is customer success is this element that keeps moving and changing form and character. It can be historically maybe a customer service center, partly a support department, and it can come in different shapes, such as automated digital touch teams, all of these where you go up market and you have a product that matches self-service and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's really about human beings, and it can be exactly what you need it to be. I think there's no universal template for how you want to build your CS team and how you want to have that culture around it to support it. It's really a matter about your product and the people using your product and the emotions they go through when they're using this. Again, back to outcomes, which Daphne also mentioned. I'll come back to that as well. And I'll give 5 perspectives on CS today from within the business, all related to some of these topics I mentioned before. And hey, don't stress about CS. This is customer success existed way before we, as a software as a service society, decided to put a label on it. There are some of the bigger known SaaS companies who claim to be the inventors of this, but at the end of the day, it's good customer service and logic, and you may already be doing a lot of this without knowing it. So looking at the people, especially around the founder's C-level, the founder's mindset is where it all begins, super important. You cannot drive proactive problem-solving consultancy such as CS without you have executive commitment. It's super important to have that support, and that starts with you, the founder. It has to match the strategy you're going to market with. Again, what type of product can be very, very different. Having an army of 50 salespeople and maybe a few CSMs is bound for disaster, if you ask me. You really need to make sure that you have a strategy that supports your customer success, because it will, if not already, will be a very key revenue driver. Secondly, it's a responsibility for you as a founder and as a C-level, and put that responsibility across everyone. You may put a label on an employee and call him, her customer success manager, and now you own this area, and that's fine. There are some things you need to do as a customer success manager, but it's just as much, if not more important, it's a state of mind within the company. You really have to make this a thing in your blood, to understand, okay, what is success of our customers? What is it we are doing? What are we trying to solve? Really pin down on the pain points for the reasoning to buy this offer we go to market with. So building a culture around customer success into your organization is highly important, and do it early. If you ask me, it's much easier. And as a C-level founder, you have all the chance in the world to really get involved and make it your own. You don't want to just celebrate the closed ones in the new biz. You really want to celebrate a lot of things. Also, when a new feature being highly adopted, you want to celebrate renewals, you want to celebrate a review, you want to celebrate different things. But it's very important to be visible in front of the entire team around these things. From openly, we're blessed with having a founder and CEO who really has this as a part of her personality, to really think, okay, thinking as the customer, acts as the customer, to really push this mentality and this mindset forward throughout the organization, to say, hey, we are here because of our customers. We're not here just to check in and check out, and that's really something we can feel around the organization. Secondly, we have the entire organization. Alignment around the user and the different departments is super important. Back in Trustpilot, back then in 2015, I think we were still having silos, as we have our classical new biz Trustpilot, customer success and support, very typical silos, but it was also very much not connected. We made a lot of changes to that, and it's I think Trustpilot is super good at that today. But knowing that you had communications going with the same customer and the same company from different departments without talking to each other, it was very critical, and you could actually go to support to discuss a support ticket and come back with an upsell opportunity because they've had a second dialogue with the same customer about building an API integration or something like that. And so to start this is really knowing your user, knowing your customer. Customer success can have so many shapes. One of the frameworks I personally prefer is the product versus user complexity framework online, where you combine the complexity of the product. Obviously, if it's relatively simple to use, you have less of a need for hand-holding this the user. And if you have a product-led growth product like Slack, if you've used it once, you probably don't. I don't think I've ever been in contact with customer success of Slack, and I used it for 7 years or something. HubSpot also kind of similar to that, is super intuitive, super self-service, but it's also a much more complex product. You can do so many things, so that's more moving up in complexity, and also the user part of it, which is more the emotions going through the user. Okay, how much does this product mean to me in my work, in the problems I'm trying to solve? You definitely don't want to be, okay, that's fine, we can solve that, but I could also just do that myself. You really want to push that forward to make sure that you create this feeling of happiness and wow for the user one way or another. And the reason I'm mentioning this is, again, what is success to your customers? What does this look like? What does it mean? What outcomes are we searching for? You really need to nail this, because without doing that, you don't know where to invest when you're scaling and building and scaling your customer success team versus putting your money elsewhere in the organization, which is a very hot topic right now, especially in the startup scene with the current market. Secondly, putting the departments together, having processes to link them together, again, unite around this mindset around customer success is more important than ever, if you ask me. Obviously, each team, we operate with some internal KPIs and so on, but the shared objectives for you as a business going to market with a SaaS solution in these times, you really need to make sure that you are spending your time and resources on the right things. Are we targeting your ICP is definitely step one that goes all the way before you come into being a customer sequence, that already in sales and marketing, but that has to be a priority from day one. That even now, make sure that you're solving the pain for the right audience, and don't go too wide, really narrow in. I'm coming back to that a little bit later. But that's super important to make sure that we are all aligned around solving the right problems for the right people at the right time. And you will eventually see CS grow into this internal meeting point as your organization gets bigger. I've seen that at Trustpilot, and I hear it all the time from other larger and more mature SaaS companies around town. Is this information highway where you get, as a CSM, you get questions from sales about referrals, you get questions from support about tickets, you get questions from finance about billing, and they all come to you because you are the center of the information here. As a person, but that shouldn't be placed on just one single person. It is the responsibility for the entire organization. Third, around the customer success manager, when you're actually executing your your customer success nowadays, it's even more important to narrow in on exactly the key pain points your customers have. Focus on those features that are generating most value for the specific customer, and to be able to do that, you really need to know your customer. Again, do you know your ICP? Do you have your account mapped? Was it mapped already in new biz process? And do you know your buying committee? Who's going to be your champion? In this post-COVID world we're living in, hybrid world, working from Bali beaches and all of that, that's super nice, but you really want to get out there. I cannot emphasize that enough. Call me old school, but that's is one of the big things we took away from Trustpilot is go out, talk to the customer, meet them, understand, see the environment they are operating in. And I can definitely say that the best integrations, the best way of use the product at Trustpilot was not something we invented. That was invented by creative customers, building smart solutions around it, which we could take back. Okay, who else would be interested in that? Now we're back to what Daphne also said. Okay, could anyone else have this same need, the same outcome? How can we take advantage of that? And that was definitely something only possible because we went out there and talked to them, especially in Copenhagen, a small town. There's no excuse not to do it. And buying a plane ticket, Oslo, Stockholm, and all of these new locations, just go out there and talk to them. For the actual CSM, whether it's being led by a founder or someone not with a dedicated designated title for it right now, this proactive problem solving is more important than ever. What is the actual mission critical things you're doing for the customer right now? We're doing it ourselves. We've gone through a review of all of our tech stack and our tools, subscriptions and licenses. What is need to have? Why are we paying this vendor to help us? What exactly are they solving for us? Who gives our money back, our investment back? And you have all the chances in the world to understand that by talking to your customers, knowing your customers, and navigate your customer through by using the product. But if you don't do it, it's super difficult to make sure that you're working on the right things, making sure your objectives or you're aimed at the right outcomes for the customers. And it begins obviously in the sales process, but also for the onboarding. More important than ever, again, depending on your level of complexity for your product, super critical to get in early and get that wow experience and make sure you can reduce the time to value. The entire growth journey for you as a business starts in the onboarding, even without being a focus at that point. But the emotions that the user is going through is definitely a gate around onboarding, and it's quite critical. And if you find yourself doing more than 20% of actually reactive work, then you're not really doing customer success, then it's more of a support function. So you really want to make sure that the majority of the time spent is proactive towards your customers. Create champions, we all know this. Own it, make it yours. If you are an early CSM in a startup company, you have all the chances to affect how the C is going to be, together with the founder, together with the management team. Just a few weeks ago, we had this one posted from a ex-customer. Well, the company is still a customer, but our champion left that company, and without asking him to, completely unmotivated, he just goes on LinkedIn and write this saying, okay, I've left my job. I really care about automation and make life easier and don't spend time on tedious things, which is super critical right now with these environment. And this is what you want to end up with. Okay, you have a champion, you have a really loyal user out there just saying, hey, if you don't want to struggle with managing your suppliers and your vendors yourselves, use Openly and a list of other services. All right. Then for the commercial management team, this is really on you. Make sure that we merge all client-facing activities together. We are not building a sales department and a customer success department and a support department. You're building one unified commercial department, all working together. Do it from beginning, all of the touch points. You have systems, you have tools like HubSpot and other systems to really help you with this. Make sure that all of your communications are captured and presented in the right way. This 360-degree view has been a topic for years now on really get the full view of the customer. It's not an easy job to do, but if you start early on together with your product team, it's definitely possible. It's super important for you to be able to make CS as a growth engine. Commission schemes, I'm not going to touch too much about that today, just briefly a comment on it. You really want to make sure you do this carefully when you are having one department under what you can call the client-facing activities. Historically, sales reps with a big commission scheme versus CSMs who are historically been measured on different things. Make sure you measure your reps on the same things because it's everyone's responsibility. Quick money right now, quick wins in new business is fine, but it's not sustainable right now. You really want to make sure that you get the customers in, maybe even at a lower price point to expand it later on. That's some of the things we are currently discussing here internally also is okay. How can we, what options, what tools do we have in the box to twist to match the market right now? Budgets are being cut, hiring freeze, layoffs. Everyone is going through the tech stack, and we cannot really add more services. Maybe we actually have to reduce. You really want to be one of those tools who's not being taken out of the box. So we land and expand strategy, maybe reduce the price point and focus on the core products first. Consider some pricing options when it comes to volume and usage to see, okay, get in early, add on later. And then finally, for the management team, make sure you have multiple fingerprints on a deal and get CS in early on the sales process. And this it generates a much better customer experience for the user, and it will eventually also help you in your growth. Okay, time-wise, speeding up a little bit here. For the product team, my last perspective is definitely for you. Make sure that if we have and we want to succeed with customer success and make it a growth engine and a revenue driver, which it already is, maybe new business versus existing business is 50-50 right now, who knows, but that's definitely a target right now. But to be able to do this, we really need data visibility, and it affects your product development, it affects your pricing strategy, retention, it affects everything. And obviously, when you have the product you're building, is super critical for the user, and it just makes sense that you are part of this. We just recently, a few weeks ago, had a conversation and made a decision around whether or not we should build a new feature that is completely adding up on features, or if maybe we should take a step back and see, are we for real capturing, showing the value of our product for our ICP, for our champion? And we decided, hey, maybe we can actually make a few tweaks to make it even better, even making more visible and more real for the value that we're delivering for the customer, versus building a new feature that we had to go out to market with and present and get users to change behavior to actually adapt. So we decided on, okay, let's make sure that we are making our core product even better. Ask the right questions. Again, this is a continuation of what Daphne also said. What does success look like for your customers? Are we solving the right things? And you really need to have some listening posts in your customer journey. Decide where they are, where are the gates they go through, where are the aha moments and so on, where are those triggers for value throughout the journey. You could also have a conversation around the classic metrics. I'm not going to go into that now. I think we've said it several times now, super important that you measure the things that are actually important for the customer. All right, breathing break to summarize. Right now, we are going through these very difficult times, especially for us startups with searching for investments and so on. Growth is being replaced by reduce your burn rate and work efficiently. How's your sales productivity? All these kind of things, and it makes sense. I actually think it's a good thing for us to make sure that we build a foundation that's solid and ready for growth, ready for scalability. And several of these things we're talking about here is super important to actually accomplish that. Founder, get involved early, engage, celebrate. Don't be the one who just celebrate the sales and new sales. Celebrate reviews, celebrate adoption, celebrate quotes from customers. For the organization, gather around CS. It's a mindset, it's a philosophy. It doesn't have to be a work task assigned to someone. And hopefully you are already doing that to some extent. Solve mission critical problems in CS, focus on what matters the most, focus on those 20% of your product that generates the most happiness or most value for your customer. For the management team in commercial right now, super difficult to hit targets in new biz. We saw that in Q3. Even more important now that you actually, when the deal is brought in, lock it in, and that's by CS. Make it a growth engine in using some of these examples, and then technology-wise and product team-wise, data. It's been important for many years. It still is. You have to know it. You have to show it, and then use it for your own benefit. It will take strategy, time, and effort to make it work. But there's definitely one thing for sure is that if you do this well, you are bound for customer expansion and upsells and growth. And again, it doesn't have to be that difficult. It's not really something we've invented because we wanted to in the SaaS society. This is basically just logic and good customer service, and if you do that, you are definitely on the right track. That is for me. We are out of time. Email me, ping, poke, or PM me. I don't think you can poke anymore, even though that was a quite fun feature. I'm regularly being teased for not having these apps installed on my phone, but I think that's better for my work-life balance, but I will eventually reply. If you want to hear more about Openly, we just launched our podcast, Inspiring Legal, where we focus on how to scale legal teams in also in tech companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Søren. Okay, we are definitely running out of time, but I just want to get one final question before we wrap up, and that's for you, Daphne. Actually, I think it's a really good point to just ask, do you have tricks to identify the CS KPIs are directly attributable to your B2B SaaS? Let's maybe just touch upon that before we end, if you have a few minutes to spare. Just to sort of, center it in.
Happy to talk about that. So my philosophy with KPIs for success is there is a chain of KPIs, right? So there's leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are the stuff that your investors and the financial reports will care about. So it's your net revenue retention, your lifetime value, your gross retention or churn rate, cancellation rates, etc. Like those are things that, like when you go into a conversation with an investor or with an executive that you're trying to bring into your business, that they will care about. You will tell them whether you are in the end of the line, whether you're successful at driving value to your customers and capturing that value back, whether your business is sustainable or not. So independently of the business that you're running, like net revenue retention, churn, are two metrics that you'll have to measure, right? So if you're in a transactional business, this will be slightly different for you because obviously that there's no churn. You might look at like a account growth, but yeah, those are two metrics I think that you have to have. But then, as I was saying during my talk, none of those metrics are actionable, right? You don't look at your net revenue retention target and say, okay, our net revenue retention this month was 128%. It doesn't tell you anything about what you need to do in order to drive it forward. Like, how can you take action on that metric? You can't. It's a result, right? That's why outcomes are so important. So whenever you, like, if I was designing a customer success team from the ground up, what I will have is I will have leading indicators. So I will look at, okay, what is the, in our case, in HubSpot, for example, we have a CRM platform. So we're looking at what are the 3 most important outcomes for our customers and how are we tracking against those. So for us, it's like revenue growth, lead generation, etc. And of course, we segment that depending, if you're a small business versus a corporate business, we have different benchmarks for those. And you can get as complex as you want for this. You can have like a ton of segments, regional targets, etc. But look at the top 3 outcomes that you want to drive for your customers. Then the other thing as well is, what is the job that you want your CSM to do? Right? If you're expecting your customer success manager to manage a book of business of 150 customers, for example, as a benchmark, I think 150 is a lot, but I know a lot of companies that do that. So if you're expecting them to manage 150 customers, what engagement are you expecting them to have with those customers? Are you expecting them to have quarterly business reviews with them? Are you expecting them, to have a specific cadence that you want to see? And again, you can get very complex with this, and you can have like an entire customer journey and different touch points. In HubSpot, we call that the optimal engagement cadence, and we do have a very complex one for our direct CSMs. But you can start this very simple. You can say, I expect customer success managers to touch base with their customers every quarter. And you can measure that to see whether you're engaging with your customers. I know a lot of people that will kind of shrug at engagement, kind of volume metrics. I think alone the volume metrics, again, don't tell you anything, and they can be very easily gamified. So I wouldn't incentivize your CSMs based on volume metrics. But the only way for you to drive outcomes for your customers, sorry, not the only way, there's a few ways, but a very effective way is to actually talk to your customers. Without talking to them, you can't do a lot of the stuff that Søren was talking about in his presentation. You can't understand their pain points. You can't figure out what's important to them, etc. So having those engagement metrics will tell you, especially at the start when you hire somebody, is the book of business being touched? Are they having those conversations? So I will have a combination of outcomes and that. If you expect your CSMs to generate growth opportunities, in HubSpot, for example, we have success qualified leads. So they're leads that the success team sends to the sales team. So customer success managers in HubSpot don't close deals, but they send opportunities. So for example, if I have a customer who is using HubSpot Pro, Marketing Pro, and I see that there is a need for more automation and they're a good fit for enterprise, I might have a very brief conversation with the customer and show him a few features, and he might say, oh yeah, that looks great, I'd love to learn more. And then you pass it on to the sales rep. So we measure the success qualified leads. So that's to say that there's a lot of stuff for you to measure, but I would really focus on outcomes. Don't forget the outcomes. That's literally what you can drive. You can drive that metric. Then engagements for your CSMs. Again, don't do that alone. Don't incentivize them based on that purely, because then it's just going to be a gaming metric. And then finally, if you're expecting growth, how do you measure that your CSMs are actively working on that growth? We use success qualified leads, but you can use a few different things there.
Thank you so much, Daphne.